Today we are talking about habits. And I'm going to share some of my own habits that have been really helping me lately. But first, I wanted to chat about why habits are so important to begin with. And it's one of those things that when I was back in school, even into my first job, habits weren't much of a consideration. When you are going from activity to activity, obligation to obligation, habits just form naturally. You have to be at work at a specific time, so you wake up about an hour earlier so you have time to get dressed and make the commute, or whatever time that might be. You have homework to do when you're a student, and so you go to class, you do your homework or some of it, and then you have unstructured time to do whatever you want. Habits aren't much of a consideration. They're something that form out of necessity. But since I have been self-employed, I've had a lot more time to see how my habits actually affect my daily life. What I found is that habits really are the tool to taking back control over your life. You want to make a change in your life, and not even in yourself. You want to make more money, or you want to create a job that's more fulfilling for you. I can't even say that. You want to create a job that's more fulfilling for you, or you want more free time, or you want to be healthier. Habits are where you start, because I love this phrase that I heard somewhere that I'm going to not remember who it's quoted from, but the phrase is, you are what you repeatedly do. So what you do every day becomes what you do every week, and what you do every week becomes what you do every month, and then every year, and then that becomes who you are. Right? Because we are our actions. We are what we repeatedly do. So taking control of your habits and choosing which ones you want to implement in your life is really the key to choosing who you want to be. So here are some of the habits that have been super helpful in my own life lately. And I like to try on different habits for size pretty regularly. I'll do sometimes like month-long experiments to see how different things feel and if it's actually beneficial for me. But the key tool for me that has been really great for helping me keep track of those habits is a habit tracker. So I got super nerdy and I decided to create a spreadsheet. And this is my habit number one, is tracking all of my habits in a spreadsheet. And it started out really simple, where I would keep track of how much sleep I was getting every night. Now, I do have a Fitbit, which makes it a little bit easier because it tells you what time you wake up, how long you slept for, and depending on the model you have, it also tells you the quality of sleep you had, how much REM you got versus deep sleep versus light sleep. It's pretty nice, not gonna lie. And this isn't sponsored because I'm really not cool enough for that. Even if you don't have a Fitbit, you can easily track this just by keeping a notebook next to your bed and writing down what time you go to sleep and writing down what time you wake up. And this is step one, right? Getting a sense of what time you go to sleep and wake up. But then I wanted to see, okay, how does that impact me throughout the day? So I started tracking my energy levels. And this one took a little bit more dedication because I would check in at certain intervals every day. So I have one check-in at an hour after I wake up. And on a scale of 1 to 5, what does my energy feel like? How awake am I? How productive am I? And then I check in around 11 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock, and then again at 7 o'clock. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not doing this actually. Like, I'm not checking into that document every single hour. I usually fill it out at the end of the day just by memory. And then I started tracking what kinds of foods I was consuming each day. So how many servings of meat or dairy or fruit was I having? And maybe seeing how did that impact my energy levels? And I also tracked what time I eat breakfast. I track what time I exercise. If I do, I usually don't. But if I do, it's in there and it's really exciting. And then I, of course, have a little notes column at the end where I just add in whatever extra thoughts so I can have notes for myself when I go back to decipher what was actually going on. And I'm at the point now, I've been doing this for about 2 months, that I am able to start seeing some correlations. And what's really cool about having it in a spreadsheet is there are built-in graphing tools that I can go in and actually see, what this looks like over time. But more than that, it's really about paying attention to my own habits and having that check-in every day of, what am I doing and how is it making me feel? And you start thinking about it throughout the day. It's like, okay, I'm going to have some Doritos in the afternoon. And then I realized oh wait, my energy just plummeted. I wonder if it's because I ate the Doritos. So that's the system I've been using, and if you guys want more in-depth information on that, please let me know in the comments. Maybe I can make a video about that tracking system specifically. But that habit overall has helped me start to see the patterns in my own life and has given me a framework for testing out some other habits and seeing really specifically how they impact my daily life. Now, the second habit that has been really helping me lately has been to wake up at a consistent time. Now, waking up at a consistent time also requires going to bed at a consistent time. So I'll tell you a little trick that I've been doing is I realized I'm like, we have alarms for waking up. Why don't we have alarms for going to bed? Especially if you're trying to make a change like this, where you're like, I want to be up at a consistent time every day. Set some alarms for going to bed. I have one. So I try to wake up every day by 7:30. I want to be out of bed by 7:30. That's the goal. It doesn't always happen because I might be more of a morning person, but sometimes events are happening at night. But having a consistent time overall does help you stay consistent. Once you get into that habit, it's a lot easier to keep even when little blips come up. But I also have a alarm that goes off at night. At 9 o'clock, my alarm goes off, and that means that it is time to get ready for bed. And sometimes I'm doing things and I don't want to go to bed, and then I have another one scheduled for 9:30, and it's like my virtual phone mom saying, you need to go to bed right now. I should make a recording of that. That's what my phone should say when it goes off. But anyway, that second alarm is like my last call. Go to bed, because my goal is to be in bed by 10 o'clock. And for some of you guys are like, oh my gosh, that is so early, you're so old. And I'd say, yes, I am. But waking up at a consistent time, and a consistent early time especially, has been really helpful for me, for my energy levels, for having more time to do things in the morning. I don't feel rushed. I feel like I can wake up and make my breakfast, make my hot drink, whatever I'm having that day, and have the time to slowly wake up before I dive into my work. So that has been super helpful. The third habit is something that is pretty personal, and I am going to cover my bases here and say that I am not a nutritionist, and every person and every body is different. But something that has been really helpful for me has been smaller breakfasts. So I used to, for the past 2 years, have 2 pieces of toast every single morning. I would wake up, I would go downstairs, I would toast my bread, I would put butter on it, I would make my coffee, and I would carry it back to my office and munch on it while I started diving into my email and getting into things for the day. And it was great. That was my ritual. But I realized that some mornings, as I was making my toast, I'm like, I'm actually not that hungry for this. But I was like, well, but if I don't eat it, I won't have enough energy. So I'll go ahead and just make it. I'm sure I'll be hungry enough. And then there'd be other days where I'd get to lunchtime and I'm like, I'm not actually hungry for lunch. And, the reality is that 2 pieces of bread isn't that much. In my case, they were pretty decent sized, whole grain, 12 grain, fancy, healthy bread. So they were a little bit more filling. But in time, I was like, you know what? I need to listen to my body here. And I need to just eat when I'm hungry. What a concept, right? Eat when you're hungry. And so I started just waiting. So I would make my coffee. And then if I got hungry, and that was about 50% of the time, I would go ahead and just make 1 piece of bread. And if I was hungry after that, then sure, I might have another snack. But honestly, I haven't been hungry since. This has just been wonderful for my energy levels because I'm not starting out the day feeling bogged down by my body having to process so much food first thing in the morning. It's been great. I love it. And I think there's something to be said for being a little bit more intuitive about what your body needs. When you slow down to consider, how does this make me feel? When I do this, does it feel positive? Do I feel sluggish? You begin to see those correlations. Which brings me to my next one. The habit that has been changing me most recently has been quitting coffee. And oh my goodness, I did not want to put this one in the video because I am so sorry for anyone who has to quit coffee, because coffee is the best. Pity me. But just over a week ago, I decided to quit coffee for a while because, it is an addictive substance, and it's been a while since I hadn't had a cup of coffee in the morning. I was like, you know what? What's on the other side? I think it's valuable to break addictive habits, even if they're not necessarily harmful ones, such as coffee. It's pretty well accepted. But just to see, do I need this in my life, to reevaluate from a clear mind, is this something that I want to continue with? And I didn't know this at the time, but again, I think that being tuned into your body and listening to it, you make decisions intuitively. And so I would tell my friends, I'm like, yeah, I'm quitting coffee. And they'd be like, why? And I'm like, I'm not totally sure, but this is something that I need to do right now. And what I hadn't realized is that over the past year or so, I have not been sleeping my best. And it's been kind of up and down. When I quit coffee, first of all, it was hard. I had a couple headaches and I was really sluggish throughout the day, but I was also sleeping like a baby at night. And I was like, interesting. I just must be really tired from, this lack of coffee. These withdrawals must just be making me tired. That's, not going to last very long. But then I had one little cup of coffee. I was like, you know what? I've been a couple days without coffee. I feel like I've been cleansed. I can go ahead and have another cup. And I had one little cup. And the morning was fine. I actually had it because I had a sales call in the morning that I wanted to have energy for. But then around noon, I started feeling really anxious. I was pacing around the house, which isn't that abnormal. I pace around the house to stay active throughout the day and make sure I'm not sitting on my butt all day. But pacing with a purpose of just like, oh my gosh, something is wrong. I need to keep walking until I feel better. That's not a good sign. And then when I went to bed, I was tired, but not. And I couldn't sleep for like 2 hours. And the next morning I woke up and I'm like, oh, I guess coffee is not the best thing ever for me. And everybody reacts to caffeine differently. Everybody processes it differently. I'm not saying everybody needs to go quit coffee right now, but for me, breaking that habit and then seeing the actual effect that it has when it's not something that I'm used to opened my eyes. And that kind of sucks. I miss coffee. But I have replaced it, so I tried to do it really smart, quitting coffee. I didn't go cold turkey because I had work to do. I didn't want to have like super bad migraines. And, again, I've had like a cappuccino every single morning for the past 2 years. And so what I did is I actually had those little chocolate covered coffee beans that you can get from Starbucks. And they're really good. And I just looked online. I'm like, how many of these equals a cup of like a cappuccino or a cup of coffee? And then every day I started out with that amount and then I just decreased it every day. And it's kind of a weird way to do it, but I knew that if I tried to actually just drink a little bit less coffee, that I feel bad for wasting it. And anyway, you just have to do what works for you. The other thing that really helped was replacing the coffee. So I had some chai and I would make that every morning, and it still made me feel like I was having my little morning treat, and that's become my new ritual, and it's great. The fifth habit that has been changing my life is turning off most of the notifications on my phone. And this is actually a process I began a while back. I read an article that I wish I could link here, but honestly, I have no idea where I read it. But the article suggested to only leave on the notifications of those that are actually asking for your attention specifically. So anytime somebody sends you a direct message, that's about it. Because like in Twitter, we'll have notifications where the little red dot shows up on your phone. You're like, oh, I got a notification. And you get in there and they're like, here are some tweets we think you might like. And you're like, that's not what notifications are for. So there's 2 things you want to do. First of all, go into each social media app, and go into the settings. You can do this with Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Go in there and turn off all the notifications except for when somebody contacts you directly. Yes, you can do this, and yes, it's going to be super helpful. And then the other thing to do is to go into your phone settings. And in iPhone, you can go to settings and the notification, and then choose how you want the notifications to show up. Do you want them just to have a little dot? Do you want to get a ding? I definitely recommend reducing your notifications just as much as possible. Obviously, maybe if you use your phone for work and you have emails coming in, maybe you want those ones dinging, but your social media stuff probably isn't as important. And this has not helped me kick my social media habit entirely. I think that would require something a little bit more drastic. Maybe there's a social media detox coming up in the future, but it has definitely helped me get a little bit more control over how I use my phone so that I'm not a slave to the notifications, and I can theoretically choose on my own when I want to go see what's going on in the world of social media. And the final habit that has been changing my life lately has been to take better care of my skin. Now, my skin journey has varied over the years. I used to deal a lot with adult acne, and when I got engaged to my husband, I realized I don't want to have acne in my wedding. And that's just my own little, petty thing. And plenty of people have adult acne and it's not a big deal. But for me, I was like, I want to get rid of this. And so that's when I was like, okay, no extends is too much. I'm going to figure this out. And I started with a couple products that did not work well. I did finally actually get a subscription to Curology. And that really helped. Curology is a system where it's a monthly subscription program where you actually get to have a dermatologist on call to help you figure things out. And then they create a custom prescription for you. And then you see how it works. Maybe then they tweak it. And I'll tell you what, the first one they sent me worked perfectly. It was great. And so I quit my subscription and just kept that one bottle. I'm like, this is it. This is the final thing. This is like my entire life in a bottle. This is going to save me. And it was great. I had clear skin for my wedding. But once we were married, I just didn't